A while ago, we released a video where we tier listed which genres you should be making for your indie game. When we looked at things like how hard are they to make, how easy are they to market and to sell, things like that. So we were tier listing them not on how fun are they, but we were tier listing them on you're an indie developer looking for a genre to make their own game. And we said that, hey, certain genres are easier than others, such as don't make MMORPGs and MOBAs. If you haven't checked out that video yet, be sure to do so. You can find it there.
Are you sure it's over there?
Somewhere it's there, and I think it's really cool. And a lot of you guys actually requested for even more genres, so we had to do what the people demanded, and we assembled a list of 11 more game genres that we will be going over and discussing how easy they are and how marketable they are as a game developer. So stick around. Now, I want to preface, we did shoot ourselves a little bit in the foot with the previous one because we took very broad genres. For example, we said things like a strategy game or a simulation game, but you can actually subdivide them in a lot of extra genres. So what you'll notice is that some of the topics that we'll be talking about, some of the genres, can fit in some of the genres we already discovered in the previous video, but these are more drilled down often, and we do still have some unique new genres as well. So I think we should just get started, and the first genre we have, I'm gonna start off with a Soulslike.
So Soulslike, I think most people know it from the very small series called Dark Souls, which totally didn't inspire like a ton of other games.
I mean, Soulslike, like the name comes from Dark Souls to begin with.
So what does a great Soul-like make? Well, basically it's very challenging. All of them are.
Not to develop.
Yeah, to play. And also environmental storytelling is something that's very big. You don't often get real storytelling in the here's a cutscene,
like
you
journal notes, or like there's a dead body here.
Yeah, so you have to create your own narrative with the things you are given, basically.
Yeah, some indie titles are The Search and Hellpoint as well, and we'll have a lot of other B-roll of those games as well.
Gee, I wonder what some AAA titles are. Maybe Dark Souls.
And
Demon Souls, Elden Ring.
Elden Ring, yeah, with a Souls in the name.
Yeah.
Now, I think that these should be all right to make, because you already said, for example, you don't need cutscenes. Cutscenes are often something very hard, and like voice acting and things like that for an indie to be able to afford and spend time on. And in the end, it's more on getting some good mechanics, and just, yeah, making it harder isn't really that hard. It needs to be hard in a rewarding way, I guess. That's the hardest part. But that's not something that you need to know how to program. That's something you just need to do a lot of playtesting for, really, to dial in that difficulty.
Yeah, I agree. But because the concept of a Souls-like I explained to you, it doesn't mean a set of mechanics. You can really choose what it is. You can even make it 2D Souls-like, 3D Souls-like. Like there are Soul-likes that cross over with other genres. So it's very flexible in that regard, I think. So I also think it's a pretty good one to make.
But this is the first one.
Yeah, that's always a dangerous thing, because where the hell do you put it?
I would put it at like B.
I was thinking A or B, so let's just take B.
Let's take B, so we have some things to go up and we have some things to go down from.
But yeah, not a bad thing to get started with.
Yeah. Our next genre is one that I've played too much of, and that is a tower defense game. So Bloons Tower Defense is basically the number one, but I also actually played some other games that are tower defense, a bit different. Sanctum, which is instead of top down, is first person actually, and it's more of a sci-fi game. And there are some other indie games as well, such as Rogue Tower. And the concept is very simple. You have enemies starting here, they want to go to here, and you put down towers and walls and barricades to prevent them. Orcs Must Die is another one that implements this mechanic, or like this concept really. And once again, it's maybe a subset of like, I don't know, puzzle game or action game, but I think that these can offer really engaging content. I think it can be really easy to get something fun and addictive in it. And I think that generally, technically, these aren't too hard, because what are, for example, you have like the common ones like spring traps, or you have things that shoot like catapults and things like that to block pods. And I think these are generally quite a good starting point as well in your career. I think what is hard though is making it unique and sellable.
Yeah, I also want to say the same. The technical stack is, I think, pretty achievable for a lot of people. However, from a marketing perspective, I think it's hard to make a tower defense style game like stand out, because there is a lot of overlap between tower defense games, and if you have unique mechanics, it's hard to show it visually often because you don't really move around or something. Like the little guys that want to reach the end maybe move around, but you try to stop them. So it's not always super visual.
Yeah, I would put this as B as well.
But the big question is above or below?
I would put it the same.
Oh, you're so diplomatic today.
Would put it above or below Dark Souls?
I actually would put it... Technical stack is Dark Souls game... Souls-like, not Dark Souls. Souls-like games are harder, I think.
But they're easier to market.
Yeah, easier to market.
Whereas these are technically easier but harder to market.
So we will put them at the same height, but you decide for yourself which one is superior.
Are you better at programming and technical stuff, or are you better at really getting your art style true to the world, basically? Yeah. The next genre we have is brawling and fighting games, so things like Smash Bros or, Brawlhalla and things like that. Mortal Kombat as well, where the goal is very simple. You punch the other people to shit until they either fly out of the map or until they die, basically, or KO or whatever. Once again, these are games that are very easy, or I think what's hard with these games is actually getting a good feel. Like the game feel is really hard with these games, I feel. That because punching is the main concept of your game, and if you can't make that feel satisfying and also give depth to it, look at the combo system in games like Mortal Kombat, Mario, Smash. I think that's the harder part. You need to be able to have a very big skill gap, or you need to allow for very low level players to play, but you need to go to the very high ranks as well to really give a lot of depth to it. Technically, it's quite easy. Visually, it's also relatively easy to market, I feel, because punching people is like adrenaline. It's cool, you add a catchy soundtrack and you have a teaser trailer already.
Yeah, or something like, for example, Mortal Kombat does is it's the fatalities, everyone knows them. They are super visual. They are very easily recognizable, things like that. I agree actually with almost everything you said. Yeah.
This is boring.
Yeah, this is very
Start
boring.
yelling at me.
However, I think there is a lot of depth to these games that isn't immediately noticeable on the surface, because purely from a basic is it working perspective, it's very easy to make. But then again, like you said, game feel, the depth of your combat, you have to make sure it's also balanced, which is not always easy when you, for example, look at Smash. There are 100 characters and there's everyone does some things differently. You have range things, melee things, damage they do. I think for balancing it's also quite hard. Another thing that also often comes with these games that you didn't mention is, for example, multiplayer. Because, if you have to have at least local multiplayer, because who wants to play a bot all the time? And almost all of them have online multiplayer in some form. So that's the biggest challenge, I think. And if you don't make it, if you make a story-driven brawler or whatever, then I guess you don't have to do it. Though generally in the genre, you would at least implement some multiplayer. Now that I said that aloud, I think it's worse than I initially thought.
I think it's a C.
C, maybe even D, because I think for these kind of games, the multiplayer is very important.
I think if you're on a game jam, this is a great game. But if you wanna really make a fully finished game, it's a lot harder. So I think indeed a C- is what I would give it. You can live with that.
I can live with that.
This next one is a bit of an odd one, but I just put it in for fun, and that is visual novels. Some of the big ones here are Doki Doki's Literature Club, or Hatoful Boyfriend, or
the bird one.
Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is also a visual novel, or fan favorite, the Colonel Sanders dating game, also a visual novel. Of course, visual novel is basically a game in the sense that it uses a digital medium for storytelling, and it depends. You have the ones where it's purely just I go through a story, or what's also very common is more of a dating simulator where you talk to different people, you have divergent paths of maybe you choose to go for Monica or you choose to go for another character, and that way you have the game. I think. Do you have anything to add?
Well, I have a lot of things to say about this. First of all, mechanic-wise, this is probably one of the easiest genres to make.
Yeah.
So if you're really a horrible programmer and just want to make art and tell a story, this is probably triple S tier for you.
Yeah, I think that if you're just someone who is really good at drawing, for example, and especially because these have the Japanese anime art style, it comes from Japan as well, visual novels. I think this is easy to make something that really you can show off your creative skills, your 2D drawing skills, and even maybe your story writing skills, stuff like that. I think it's amazing for that.
However,
I don't have a...
you don't have a however.
Or like, no, I think making these also, there are dedicated engines just for visual novels. So RenPy, which is Python based, or you also have Visual Novel Maker, which is made by the same people who made RPG Maker, are very, very easy and user-friendly to make really advanced visual novels already. I don't have much bad to say about these, honestly, apart from that, okay, maybe it's
Terrible to market.
terrible to market, okay, and like very, like not a lot of people play visual novels, I feel, compared to some other games.
You're also very reliant on your story
Yeah.
and your characters, and that is very hard to bring across before people play it.
Yeah, and I think that also it's very hard to make a good story if this is one of your first games, because
I think it's not that great to make. It's not horrible.
I do still think it's really good for the right people. I think
Yeah, for the right people, sure, but if you want to become an indie game developer and you only want to make visual novels,
Yeah.
I have bad news for you.
I think it's doable though, to a certain degree. If you're an indie game, if you're a solo indie developer and you are trying to learn programming, but it's like programming is hard sometimes and you just want to make something to get your creativity out. I think that having a visual novel is really good still to make something.
Yeah.
Just make games.
Yeah, to make something. That's the reason I won't give it an F, but I honestly think
Where would you put it?
below Brawler.
No,
Just in
I would put it as C tier.
Just a D.
No.
You can't really sell it easily. If you ever want, it's good to learn, I guess, even though you just mentioned that there are like engines that do everything for you, so you won't learn a lot. And even if you did write it yourself, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, because in the end, it's just show pictures.
Yeah, so from a game development wise, like the entry point is great.
You learn about writing, you learn about art maybe.
Yeah, but for commercially, I don't even, do we have a big AAA hit?
I think Doki Doki is pretty much...
Is it AAA though?
That's the point of visual novels, is it's always made by like one guy in a basement or one girl in a basement. That's what like is the charm of visual novels. You get these really unique ideas that
Fictions.
it's basically like no big studio is ever going to greenlight a Colonel Sanders dating simulator. This is something that a Joe from their basement has to make because the universe demands it, but nobody else will bring it to them.
And the only reason we know about the Colonel Sanders dating sim is because it's so unique. Just like I mentioned, like, oh, the bird one. I don't even know the name, but I know the bird visual novel dating sim, whatever thing it is.
Okay, we'll put it at D tier. Are you happy?
Yeah.
But if you're
2 pixels below,
2 pixels, okay.
2 pixels below our dear friend Brawler, and I'm happy.
Okay, but if you are an artist, seriously consider just making them for fun, for showcasing. It's also a creative way to showcase your portfolio almost of how can you draw.
Yeah, make a portfolio in a visual novel. Send that to people. They won't think it's weird you sent them an EXE at all.
This next game, well, this next genre basically is something that I slightly despise, but I did also spend a lot of time in like some old school games that I can't even find anymore, and that is a match 3 game. I feel like there's not much that needs to be explained. You have to move tiles to match 3 in a row. It's a kind of puzzle game, but it's hella popular. Of course, you have Candy Crush Saga, and I think Thomas here also is a connoisseur of some other fine games, such as Isekai Quest. There's a very big amount of those like puzzle games where you have to match 3 things, we need to build a boat is another one, where you need to match your resources basically to create a boat in the end, so you have to match sticks and stuff like that. I think this kind of had the same problem as the visual novel had. It's easy to make because in the end you just need to match 3 things in a row. It's hard to market to make it special because that's how like all of those like Isekai Quest, I think even something like Honey Pop is a great example of, oh, it's a match 3 game, but it sells really well because why? Because there's
Waifus.
There's waifus, and that's like their special thing. There's actually this whole rabbit hole on Steam if you go look at it as like match 3 games with like waifus in it.
Someone has experience, clearly. I didn't know this.
There was a Humble Bundle recently that were like for €1 you could get 13 of these match 3 games. So commercially they're horrible to like sell well. And I think also that they don't even require the same creativity as you need with something like a visual novel. I think it's a bit worse actually in that regard. If you look at something like Candy Crush, I think if you're making mobile games and you're targeting like 50-year-old Facebook moms, this is a good genre, however. But I don't really want to push that. So I would put it at D tier.
I personally would ever create a match 3 game as a indie game developer. I think you have such fierce competition from other shit games, so why make a shit game yourself? E tier.
You would say, I can live with E tier. Man, this is a very depressing list. Let's get some better stuff. Deck building games.
Who says that it's better?
I'm not really that sure about it. So we have games like, for example, Hearthstone is one of the biggest ones that I know. I don't know, do you know?
I think Across the Obelisk, Slay the Spire.
Yeah, Slay the Spire indeed.
Yeah, I actually think this is not a bad genre at all. Because I've even seen like 3D platformers using deck builders. Like the entire concept is basically you have a deck of cards and that influences how you play the game. And
you have to build the best deck.
It's basically a genre that you can easily combine with another genre, or you just use only deck builders for like a card game or whatever. The fact that it's so flexible, I think adds a lot of value because it gives you a lot of freedom.
And it allows you to really, if you have like any like normal like adventure game or whatever, if you add in it's a deck builder, you immediately have like what makes you unique generally, because there's not that many like X-genre with deck builder built in.
So when are we making a match 3 deck builder?
I was about to say that as well.
Okay. Then I'll say visual novel.
We'll make a visual novel deck builder and then it suddenly goes to S tier. But no, in reality, I would say the big problem with these is balancing. Getting your decks out and making sure that it's all balanced, that there's not like too big of a meta and like I need this deck, or for example if you have like, I think Hearthstone has the problem or like had the problem where like you can buy decks and then you have the pay to win, which is of course inevitably part of a deck building game. If you look at something like Pokemon or if you look at Magic the Gathering, it's like if you just have more money to buy more packs, you'll get more stuff.
I disagree, because of course there are some examples where that's the case. However, when you look at Slay the Spire or Across the Obelisk, you don't pay for your deck.
If
it's a single player combined with another genre basically game, I don't think like the money thing is a good argument. And if you're making a multiplayer game, it's definitely already a lower tier because you have to make multiplayer games, which is not bad in itself, but it's just the biggest challenge.
I would say A.
We had Soulslike and Tower Defense in B, right?
Yeah.
Then I think A, just because it's so flexible.
Yeah, because
like there are a lot of cool combinations.
It's like a magic sauce you just add onto like an existing game.
The cherry on top of your pie.
Our next genre is a bullet hell. So we already covered shooters in the previous one again, but here with bullet hell, I really want to dive into that specific one. It's also a common one, honestly, that you see in game jams, for example. So that's why I figured it's just worth that extra shout out. Concept is simple. There's bullets everywhere on your screen, basically. So something like a Binding of Isaac could be a bullet hell. Something like Cuphead is a bullet hell, where you constantly have to be dodging and you have to be shooting and you have to be just generally taking care. You're upgrading how you shoot, for example. You shoot faster, you shoot multiple beams, you shoot friggin' lasers, I don't care. And I think that these, once again, are a very like classic indie game. Also Vampire Survivors is one, I think. I think these are very good to get started.
I agree. Just because the examples you've given, you've already said Binding of Isaac and
I said
Cuphead.
Cuphead, yeah.
And both of them are completely different games. Like one is top-down, the other is, for example, a side-scroller. And that is also, I think, something that I value a lot when we make these lists is how flexible something is. And you can do a lot of cool things and unique things just with the restriction of having lots of bullets on the screen or whatever.
I think this one would also be an A tier.
Yeah, I also agree. Because, like once again, this is where you have a lot of freedom in a genre. I think it is easier to make you unique. And making you unique is often a good thing. Next up is roguelikes. Just like Soulslike, guess what? It's based on the old game called Rogue. And what is unique about this genre is basically you have procedurally generated worlds, you go through them, you die. Then you respawn, you're a bit stronger this time, so you go through the world again.
But it's a different world this time?
A different world. You die. You repeat this over and over and over and over and over and over, and then you have like 2,000 hours in your Steam account, and yeah, rinse and repeat.
Yeah. One game that I've played a lot is Wizard of Legend. It's probably the closest I got to a Soulslike, but honestly, not Soulslike, Roguelike. But I think it's very easy for a game to call itself a Roguelike, because I think Dead Cells is also a Roguelike, which we already covered as a Metroidvania as well in the previous video.
Yeah, Dead Cells, for example. I think there are some other ones, like go on Steam and 70% of the things are now roguelikes. So in that case, you have quite a bit of competition, I guess. So that's not ideal, but
But on the
Once
other
again.
hand, some other games you can have are Crypt of the Necrodancer and FTL, which are also roguelikes, but just those, like Wizard of Legend, FTL, Crypt of the Necrodancer, they're so completely different that even within this same genre, you can very easily separate yourself. It's also, once again, it's very engaging gameplay. You're usually like shooting or attacking something because you have to fight enemies in random worlds that are usually in quite a cool setting. I think marketing-wise is also really good. So I think, do we have an S tier? Ooh.
I'm doubting.
But it is like, I feel like
It's good.
I think a roguelike even is like, you can make this on your own even if you want. Like fully solo indie developer, I think it's realistic that you can make a roguelike game because procedural generation helps a lot with like long-term.
Yeah, you don't have to make tons of content if
Yeah.
you make a good generator. I'm really doubting because the biggest drawback of this genre, in my opinion, is just everything nowadays is a roguelike and it's a very saturated market.
Just add a deck builder.
There are so many, I mean, go on Steam and I'm sure you can find 1,000 of roguelike deck builders.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest gripe I have with this genre, but that's also a very minor gripe to have, I guess, because once again, it's like the previous ones, very flexible. You can make the gameplay however you want with just a restriction, die a lot, get a bit better. I can live with an S.
So we're making it S tier.
A...
The next genre we have is action RPGs. So think of something like Diablo as the big one, or Path of Exile, Grim Dawn. They're generally top-down isometric as far as I know. I haven't played them a lot myself, I think you have.
Well, I haven't played them a ton either, but I have played them a bit at least. And the main thing when you make an action RPG is make your character stronger and loot, 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 loot. So the biggest problem with this genre, in my opinion, is the scale. If you want to make a good RPG, if you want to compete with the big dogs,
You need to have hundreds, thousands of items to loot, for example, and weapons with like all very small variations.
And I also think in this genre, just the existence of Path of Exile is a massive problem for every indie game developer almost. Because first of all, Path of Exile is free to play, only cosmetics that you can buy, so it's not even pay to win. And you basically also have Path of Exile, I think they have a release cycle of 6 weeks or something insanely short, where they release new content, and it needs quite a bit of content even, very often. And in 6 weeks you can't match them in content-wise. So just because the market isn't saturated, because there aren't that many big ones in my opinion, but they are so big that you really need to have something unique.
Like, why would I go for your indie game that probably will cost money versus Path of Exile, which is established as one of the best for so long now?
I think this is a pretty bad one for an indie developer.
Yeah, I would, but is it as bad as Doki Doki? I think it would be D tier, honestly, because of that scale problem.
Yeah, the scale is the biggest problem because once again, mechanic-wise, it's not too horrible.
It's like you have some magic or you have like some sword fighting or whatever, but it's getting all of that content in there.
Yeah, you have to create different classes, different enemies, different worlds.
Yeah, because like what makes the game unique is how deep can you go in it.
Yeah, a good example is once again Path of Exile. Just look at the skill tree and you know you have to have a lot of content and go very deep into it. So yeah, I can live with a D. So we literally just said Diablo and Path of Exile are worse than Doki Doki Literal Club.
To make, not to play, to make as an indie developer.
Yeah, just to make that clear.
And now we're maybe getting another one of the maybe weird genres is a idle game or a clicker game. So of course, cookie clicker or Adventure Capitalist or Melver Idle is another one.
Yeah, I think William has like 1 billion hours in Melver Idle.
The concept is you don't play. I never fully understood like the play aspect of it.
You see big number grow bigger.
Yeah, you have a big number and it grows bigger and you just have to put on the game and not do anything. That's the concept of idle games. I think they're quite easy to make because it's just make number get bigger and it's like you have timers and for example, if you have, I think in Cookie Clicker, it's like, oh, you can buy an auto click and it clicks once a second, and then you can buy a grandma and she costs more, but she clicks more, and you just have to manage the timers. I think that the mechanics are easy. I think selling this game is very, very, very hard, and especially not just selling, like getting people to install it, but especially getting people to pay for it is near impossible, I feel.
If you really want to make an idle game, I think the best way to go is have something art-wise that makes you unique, first of all. Or just release on mobile and hope for free to play.
Similar to Candy Crush, I feel a bit. And I think that's also where I would put this game, also as an E tier.
Yeah.
In terms of, you can make this in a weekend, that's not the problem, but you will never be able to sell this.
Unless you have great art to like show in the background. Or
yeah,
something.
but that's when you get the honey pop story again. Same with Candy Crush. It's like you have other things to lure them in.
Yeah.
People don't come for the clicker, they come for something else. Although for an idle game, you don't need hands. So maybe.
All right, and last, but I'm pretty sure also not least, is the action RPG. So what I mean by this, because this is a very broad genre once again, I'm thinking about games like Batman Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, that kind of game.
Tomb Raider.
Maybe even a God of War.
God of War, Horizon. Of course, I don't know. The problem is this genre is so big that I can't get like indie titles out of my head right now because there are just so many that are like kinda it, but also kinda not. There will be B-roll of indie titles as well, at least.
For example, Hollow Knight is definitely a Metroidvania, but it also has action and it's quite an adventure. Yeah. So I guess it's also an action-adventure game. The good thing about this genre is you have a lot of freedom once again.
I think the problem is this is a bit like, you know, how we said in the open world RPG in the previous video, it's a bit of a trap. I feel like
it depends what your scale is.
I think the scale is the trap, of course, because no one wants to make a small action-adventure game, I feel. Or how would that even like look? It would just be a short game, I feel.
Yeah, true. But when you look at like action adventure, we mentioned things like God of War and Horizon. Very open world.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a big trap. However, when you make something like the Arkham games, it's also still a big world. Also still a very big scale for an indie, but it's already a lot smaller. And even if you then even drill it down, like for example, if we do accept Hollow Knight as an action adventure game, that's another way to do it, because if your only requirement is to have the two words that a title says, like have action and be an adventure, then it's very easy to make it an S or an F tier depending on your interpretation of how big should an action adventure game be. It's a very hard one to rate, actually.
I would put it at C. It's like, it's not horrible, but I would never recommend this as a first game.
Then my argument to that would be a Soulslike game is basically an action-adventure game as well, just with environmental storytelling. Okay. How can it be worse?
Because there's more scope here, I feel.
That's once again open for interpretation, so...
Yeah, but that's my interpretation. I can do it B-.
I can live with that, but you just keep in mind, you guys over at home that are watching, this is a very hard one to rate because you can rate it in an F, because I do want you guys to make it, but you won't do it probably very successfully to make God of War. But I think it's also if you have the right mindset, the right idea, and depending how you classify it, it can also be an S tier. So that's, I mean, right in the middle. Let's just take the average.
B-, right. Did we miss any more genres? Of course we did. I don't know if we're gonna make a follow-up to this follow-up video already, but always feel free to leave your comments down below. What do you think? Do you disagree with our statements? Are visual novels such as Doki Doki actually S tier? I do agree with you in that regard. Let us know in the comments down below. If you're new here, we make game dev related content twice a week. It's various things such as these kind of more entertainment videos, or also more tips and tricks for new beginning game developers, or also just behind the scenes, or how we are working on our own game, Forge Industry.
Wishlist.
Yeah, it's an upcoming resource management and automation game that we're working on. There's a link down below in the description if you want to wishlist it, and you'll also be able to play it on the Steam Next Fest. That's all I have from this video, so be sure to subscribe and leave us a like if you like this one, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye!